Dimp Digital Presents Idle Game Chat.
Hello, Apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is the weekly video games podcast where we give our impressions of the games that you can play today and sometimes react to the latest news from the wonderful world of video games. We're here every Monday on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, absolutely free, unless it's a bank holiday, which you would have found out last week. Although those of you that stuck around and actually subscribed to the audio feed would have been treated to our first ever podcast. So, time machine jobby for people. Anyway, we're not going to dwell on the past. We're going to move forward, get the Elder in. I'm joined by the one-time Dimp Digital Gaming Quiz champion. It's Pacman himself. It's Tom Adcock. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yes, all good, thank you. Weather is quite nice today. It's been a bit of an up and down type jobby, but sun has been in and out, but it's not too cold. It's dry today, which is important for sort of keeping that mentality up, but no real complaints. I guess the real question, as I mentioned in the opening, is did you get a chance to listen to the classic episode?
Nah, I didn't. First one. I blew it, mate.
You're on like the third ever one, I think.
Was that like the best games of all time or something?
I
was
don't know.
Doing that quite early.
That might have been your first. I feel like we might have done one before that, because originally, when we was discussing this, was talking sort of 6-7 years back, we were going to do one just us two. That was when we were sitting there in that little job, saying, right, let's plot our way out of here, get a podcast up and running. So you would have been definitely on the docket early on, but
Jesus,
who knows? With all the bank holidays coming up, I mean, we've got 3, haven't we, in the next sort of 6 weeks. We'll be doing a bit of a part-time schedule here, so there'll be some more old tut being put up for people. And if you want
get
to
it in,
go on.
I was going to say, get it in, get me on, get the old Adcock.
I'll find
Youngster, had some hair.
He didn't know.
No, didn't. Annoying.
That was well before my time. Anyway, if you want to support this venture, patreon.com/idle game chat is the place to go, where you can sling us some spare change. Or you can go on Twitch and subscribe to the channel, either via paying directly, or if you've got Amazon Prime, link it to your Twitch account. You get a free Twitch subscription every month. 1 click, £2.50. Well, I think it's $2.50. But still, everything counts, and we've actually spent all the Dimp money on unlocking all the different emotes you can get on Twitch, so that'll need building back up. So hand in pocket is appreciated. Anyway, on to this episode. Got some gaming impressions. No real... Well, there has been news items, but I just can't be bothered to talk about them because it's drama for the sake of drama. We're primarily... When we talk about the news, you know that we're struggling for content. That's all I'll say. But we're blessed with this episode. We've got quite a bit that we can get through. And if we don't get through it on this episode, we'll be back at a later date anyway. But we're going to kick things off with It Takes Two. Hazelight. Okay? Joseph Ferris. The Fuck the Oscars guy, if you're wondering who that guy is. This is his new co-op only game. We're going to talk about that, so don't get too excited just yet. But I wanted to just pause where I can. I love doing this. And picking your brains about any previous titles that have come out of this Joseph Ferris. The game before this one, before It Takes Two, was A Way Out, another cooperative 2-player game. You've played that, I've played that, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on A Way Out before we dive into the modern take of It Takes Two.
Yeah, I played A Way Out with a mate, as you meant to.
Yep.
I thought it was pretty decent, as in I enjoyed the experience of playing A Way Out.
Yeah.
But it was, like, gameplay wise, it was strongest I found for in the first third, like when you're in prison, that kind of ends quite abruptly and probably too soon. And like it was quite clunky and repetitive.
Yeah.
Just a bit rough around the edges is what I would say. But an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. It certainly had highs and lows, and I'd agree with the take that the early goings are the best ones, giving you that Prison Break vibes, and that's a series that both me and Mr. Adcock are familiar with, so we enjoyed that. We actually didn't play it together, did we? I played it with Logan. I believe you must have played it with Rumble or someone of that ilk.
Yeah, play with a different mate, actually. Someone who's not really a big gamer, but is a big Prison Break fan. Yeah, Rumble binned. Someone who really just liked the show Prison Break, and someone put him onto it. This game existed. So he bought it, and the same with this It Takes Two. Only one person has to actually make the purchase, and you can both jump in. So ours is +1, basically.
Yes, that's always very handy. It's good to know that if you're kind of sniffing around it, and you know a mate who's also sniffing around it, you can either cut the costs in half, buy one between yous, or if someone has already bought it and is looking for a partner, you haven't actually got to pay out, which I think is a great system, really. Particularly as a co-op only game, it's the only way to play it is with another player, either locally or over on the internet. There's not really a better system than that going, is there?
No, absolutely.
Did you ever play Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons?
No, and this is quite acclaimed, this game. Yeah. So no, completely missed it. I only really knew about it when reading like more details about It Takes Two.
Yeah.
So no, did you play this one?
No, I didn't either. It's a definite black mark, and I kind of know what happens in it. So there's that part of me that thinks, is it worth investing the time? But maybe I should just bite the bullet and go back and play that. That was before Hazelight Studios was formed, but it was still under the direction of Mr. Ferris. So yeah, it's a bit of a black hole. But since neither of us have played it, I'm not gonna dwell on it too much. Now, I wanted to get It Takes Two. Okay, reviewing pretty well actually. I think it's 88 on OpenCritic as we speak about it. Not on any of the Fantasy Gaming League rosters anywhere. So clearly not a lot of confidence in the actual product and the marketing that happened before. How has this got on your radar? Because I didn't feel like there was a big anticipation from you. It felt like, and again, feel free to correct me, that perhaps it was the high reviews that kind of got you sniffing, or was you always thinking, well, it's another one of these co-op games, I'll give them a try?
No, it was high. Basically, the first, I think I saw a couple of reviews from IGN and another outlet that were both like 9 or maybe even a 10 out of 10. I was like, Jesus. And then when I realised it was from the studio, done Way Out, I was like, all right, okay. And then sort of got in Super Mario vibes. I was like, okay, I'm sold. And I think I've said to you before, not sure on the podcast, but I've been just bouncing off games recently.
Yes.
I've obviously got rid of my PlayStation, so I'm kind of stuck with an all digital Xbox and just Game Pass. So I was like,
I've heard it's the best thing ever, and it's once you've got Game Pass, you literally don't need anything else. And in fact, because you can get Game Pass on your phone, what are you doing with an Xbox? That's what I'm told. I don't know if that's true.
Well, go and play the medium and come back to me is what I would say to that.
Well, there's 199 other games, mate, you can get through. Bounce off a few others before you start slagging Game Pass off. Come on.
True. But anyway, I've been trying to get into something, couldn't. I was like, do you know what? I'm probably going to be all right with this game. It's going to be fairly short, you know, platformer, co-op, I'm then sort of like, held to whatever the saying is, over actually turning up to play and to get it done. So I was like, right, let's give Joey a call, see if he's interested. And he was. So
to be fair, I was a bit apprehensive because I didn't immediately say, oh, yes, thanks for purchasing that or looking to purchase that. I'll definitely play. I kind of went, well, ask if there's someone else about, but if not, I'll come along for the ride for sure. But I wasn't pushing for you to go out and get it or buy it. But I must say, having played it, I wish I'd bought it now. Because, one, I've lost out on all those sweet achievements, and two, it surprised me, mostly in positive ways, which doesn't happen too often, if I'm honest. I saw the reviews were high, but sometimes you think, wow, that could be artificially blown up. But
yeah, it's true.
No, I'm glad that you had the nous to go out and do it and had the commitment to go out and do it, especially given that, you're in this Game Pass bubble and there is a train of thought where you think, should I be buying this when I'm paying for Game Pass? Especially considering it's coming out of EA publishing in 6 months, maybe 9-12 months, it will be on Game Pass at some point. So that was that. I'm sort of surprised you went for it, in all honesty, but that kind of speaks how desperate you were to try and get into something substantial.
It's exactly that, yeah, and that was one of your like warning points to me, wasn't it? That it's it's in the EA, they the producers or whatever,
Publishing
and
it,
that's either going to come to their store or Game Pass directly, and it almost certainly is. It has that kind of vibe about it anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't full price. It was maybe like 26 pounds or something, and I was like, do you know what, I'm all right. And then it's actually longer than I expected it to be. I was thinking it was going to be a sort of maybe a 6 to 8 hour, 9 hour game, but it was more like 11 or 12 hours, I think. So yeah, I feel like I got my money's worth.
Yep. Nope. So you played it on the Xbox Series S, which we know is the sort of less powerful console. Any presentation or performance worries before we get into the technicalities? I think we had one disconnection, didn't we, throughout the entire thing? And like you said, it was it was like 10, 12 hours worth of, content. So it weren't too bad, but we did have one part where it sort of croaked out on us.
It did. I think it was pretty kind of the checkpointing, wasn't it? And we didn't really lose any ground or anything, so it was no bother. But yeah, and aside from that, no. I mean, I don't know how much this is pushing. Is this? I think we asked this. Is it cross-gen or is it? It is.
I believe so.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, technically speaking, it does look very nice in certain places. To be fair, especially some of the where it flicks into a 2D, you get a lot of like nice backgrounds and whatnot. But I don't think it's particularly pushing the console hard. So no, I had no problems on the baby Xbox.
No, one thing I would say is that immediately when you turn this game on, if you've played A Way Out, which was okay, but everyone looked a bit weird in it.
Yeah,
like
it didn't look AAA by any means. It was
no, definitely not. Whereas this felt pretty close to that. I'll be honest. As soon as we just started playing it and turned it on, I was like, "Cool, this looks 10 times better than A Way Out." Like, huge upgrade on that game. So that was immediately striking. And I was thinking, you know what? For a budget game, like you mentioned, it's not full price. I was again positively and pleasantly surprised at how good this thing looked and it ran flawlessly.
Yeah, absolutely.
No issues whatsoever. I want to touch on the narrative because time and time again I've seen this in the cliff notes of reviews where it's a bit hit and miss. Given that the A Way Out seemed like a far more like tonally, again, these are two very different games. It's a complete departure from A Way Out. Like, one of the things I would say is if you were put off by A Way Out in any shape or form, whether it was from visuals, whether it was from story or tone or just gameplay, scrabble that away because I feel like, and you can again disagree, but I feel like It Takes Two beats A Way Out in every single way possible.
100%, yeah. And to be honest, it's probably a more difficult proposition in that you've got we'll get into it more later, but it's a platformer, but you're literally changing the dynamics and almost everything about what you do every hour and a half. And kind of everything they try pretty much, I'm trying to think now, I don't think there's like a dud amongst them. They all work. And like, those mechanics are not easy to do well, and they do it really well. And I feel like A Way Out was more like, it was kind of, I guess, like a bit like The Walking Dead, wasn't it? You'd have like an enclosed area with maybe a couple of rooms or whatever, and you'd have to do several things in there. And it was a simpler mechanic, and it was kind of rinsed and repeated throughout. And
it was definitely like gameplay wise, it was light. The Way Out was far more of obviously it was trying to go for a narrative push, whereas It Takes Two does have a pretty long story, and they don't just drop it halfway through. This is something that you're going to deal with, rightly or wrongly, throughout the whole game. But the interaction you have as a player or players, as you can play it with two people, is again leaps and bounds above anything that A Way Out had in any of its games. Like, it's really crazy actually how different and how much better this is. It's massive strides they've made. Anyway, I started talking about the story. I thought maybe you could just set up a really brief narrative plot so that people are a bit cold, think, well, what am I playing this for? What sort of characters are we dealing with? And let the audience know, and then we'll chat a little bit about what we actually thought of the overall delivery of it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one for a video game. It's kind of like Kramer versus Kramer, old 80s film about divorce mixed with Pixar. So you've essentially got a family. The dad's American, the mum's from, sounds like England, daughter speaks with an English accent. They live in, I don't know if they're in America or England. Anyway, parents are
I think we confirmed it was America because the plug socket was only 2-pin.
Oh yeah, good point.
Could be. I mean, Europeans have 2 pins, don't they?
Yeah, I mean that's a real curveball.
It could be that, but you'd think, given that you've got an Englishman, English lady, and an American bloke, it's going to be one of those two, isn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, they're looking to their relationships in the shitter. They're looking to get divorced.
Lockdown, mate. It will either make or break your relationship.
Yeah, they're really struggling through it. I can't remember the daughter's name, which is pretty bad. It was Cody May and I can't remember.
No, I can't either.
I'm honest. Anyway, she's livid. She's really upset, and she kind of has a Disney moment, where she cries over the upcoming divorce, and these magic tears fall on a couple of little I guess they're dolls. I don't
Rose.
know. Yeah. Anyway, and the parents are kind of transported into these like miniature dolls. And essentially, they're kind of trying to get their daughter's attention. They're stuck in this kind of fantastical version of their home and garden.
Yes.
And then they're aided by this book of love, which the daughter was reading. Everything comes to life, basically. It's full Pixar, Disney vibes. Yeah,
it's like Toy Story, isn't it?
Very much, yeah. It's a great shout. Yeah, Toy Story. Yeah, and that sets it out. They're on this quest to kind of then really get their daughter's attention and get back to being human so they can get on with their divorce.
Yes, yeah. So you've got this book of love who's trying to. He's basically setting up trials, isn't he, for the couple to overcome, and in hope that they will either bond and get back together. I'm assuming that's his end goal. Daughter's just in tears, like crying. The mum and dad, they've been transported into these little figures. Rose, the daughter, can't see them, but they can see the impact that they make in the real world. So if they threw like a teddy off a bed, she would see the teddy move, but she can't actually see them running around. But what's quite funny is sometimes it flashes back to Rose to get an update of what she's doing, and she goes and visits the parents, and they both just like comatose. The mum's just laying on the sofa, like not responsive. Like daughter's trying to talk to her, no response. Just like mum, blah blah blah. And then dad's just sitting in a chair. So Cody's just sitting in a chair, and he's comatose. And not once does the daughter think to call the emergency services. So if we're talking about narrative plot points and plot holes, I feel like either that girl needs some serious training, really, because both of them could have been in a real spot of bother. That's my view, anyway. Anyway, so it's not a very serious story. Well, the undertone of it isn't. There's a divorce going on, so actually there is an undertone of seriousness. But the way that the characters interact with each other is very light-hearted.
Yeah.
Attempts at comedy, and it goes down that route rather than it sort of being like The Last of Us, for example. That would be the complete opposite direction. How did the overall story kind of land with you, and was it a good vehicle to teleport us around and get us to all these fantastic places, and ultimately were you satisfied with it as a component of the game?
So I knew going in it was probably the weakest point of the game. One, the subject matter is not really something I really want to play a game about, and two, I heard like a lot of people, as you said, criticize it before, so I wasn't expecting much.
No,
I mean, to be honest, it's probably better than I expected, because I think although most of the jokes probably didn't land, what you said earlier, like, the comatose parents and things, it was funny. If it wasn't intentionally funny. The book was ludicrous. I don't know who the actor is playing that book, but he's always like wiggling his hips and he looks ridiculous. And I think, just because I knew going in it was bad, I kind of just, I ignored it and laughed at it for what it was. And to be honest, these platformers rarely have good narratives anyway, so yeah, what's it up against? So yeah, I wasn't too bothered with it, if I'm honest. I thought it was actually all right.
Yeah, no. So I think initially, early on, I really was just like, I was like, this is so tiresome. and it was annoying me at times because and we'll get into how the game works, but you essentially move from level to level, and there's a different mechanic or a different world for you to interact with, and that's fun. The overall gameplay is really good. But what I found, especially in the early games, it felt like in between those transports from different worlds or different areas of the house, the cutscenes in the middle of that were really annoying me. Like, they felt long sometimes, and I was like, this is really starting to impact. I just wanted to get on and play the game.
Yeah.
And that speaks just how much I was enjoying playing it, but also just because the story was not engaging. What I would say is that as time went on, I felt like it didn't. I don't know if it necessarily got better, but my tolerance level improved, and I was happy just to kind of sit there and have a little chill between the worlds and whatnot. So I don't know if there's no like major kind of shift that made me enjoy it more, but I think that over time, as you get used to the tone of the story of like how funny these guys attempt to be, and they probably land about 20% of the jokes, it kind of just doesn't become as much of an issue as the game went on, at least for me anyway. Again, I don't know if it actually improved, but the tolerance levels were certainly there. So just not buyer beware, but there's a story here. If you don't like annoying characters and that, like, it really annoys you and you can't get past it, I actually think you might have a problem with this game, because the Cody in particular is an annoying twat. Like, I'm not surprised May's trying to walk away from him. She's out getting all the fucking bread, going to work each day. He's at home going, I can't do me guard. And then when he becomes a little dull, he's a right cocky prick. I've never known anything like it. And then the book, like you mentioned, the guy that's sort of setting you all the trials and whatnot. Jesus Christ. Like, unbearably annoying. I think I'm annoying, but he's on a different league, that bloke. So if those things like really would negatively impact your enjoyment of the game, I would suggest steering clear, actually, or skipping through the cutscenes. But, we didn't do any of that because we like to experience all the good and all the bad. So, yeah, hit and miss. Tolerance levels will define whether that's going to, how bad that's going to impact the game. We've talked around the mechanics and whatnot. You keep mentioning Super Mario. People they're shaking their heads. They're going, what are you talking about? It Takes Two and Super Mario. Explain yourself. How are we getting from this a way out walking simulator to something that's being put on the same pedestal as our favourite plumber?
Well, that's it. I feel like they were sitting around the office one day and, probably playing on their switches in between A Way Out, and they've gone, "Oi, Doug, come over here. And Miyamoto, I can better this. Got some ideas." He's gone, "All right, let's see what you got." And they've run with it. They've made a 3D. I mean, it's not open world, but some of the levels are kind of open world-esque, but
yeah.
It will do all the sort of tricks Mario will do. So it'll go from 3D to 2D and back again. It will give you like special power-ups. There'll be so every level essentially.
Yeah.
How do we so you got these like self-contained levels. I guess you'll be in the garden or climbing a big tree, and that'll be a level. And some of them are kind of like hubby worlds or base worlds. Others are like point A to point B. So you're mixing all those kind of Mario bits. When that fucking book turns up, as annoying as he is, you kind of know you're going to be getting a new power up. And
yes, yeah.
You'll be using that for probably majority of the next hour and a half throughout the level. And you normally have it's always pretty cheesy. Like, he'll talk about attraction, and then you get two magnets stuck on your back, and one can pull, one can push, which I never really got the sort of
you were a nightmare
gist
on that
of.
level,
I was a bit tired at that point. I think so apps had to sort of guide me through. It's like, you're still pushing, Tom, always push. And I was like, right. Never really got that, but there's that, and then there'll be like little fun things in the level that you might just use like once or twice. Probably some of the things are literally done once and thrown away, and it's a really good little gimmick, and it'll be gone. And I mean, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, so I think some of the early kind of tools you get, I think one of the first you get is I got a nail that I could attach to wood objects or other objects, and you got a hammer that you could hammer stuff with, so break, but also I don't know if it's the hammer actually that you'd swing off the nail with.
It was.
So you could use the hammer to swing off. So we'd get split up quite often. There'd be a path that only Tom could take, and in order for him to get from A to B over the gap, I would have to fire the nails in the correct order in the correct place so he could swing from one to the other. And obviously that's a very basic kind of. I don't want to spoil basically some of the more important stuff or the more complex stuff, but each level has its own vibe or its own set of powers, and the nail and the hammer is a good one. There's one where I could change my size. I could go really big or really small, and Adcock could walk on the walls, so he had like a zero gravity boots or whatnot. And for all these levels, there are quite a lot of levels. Like we mentioned, it's a long old game, and there's tons and tons of different ideas and tons of different mechanics. And probably barring like 5-10% of them, I felt like they were all really fun to play with, all really engaging, all really well thought out. And it was, I know in a lot of games, like you kind of, you work towards becoming the most powerful version of a set skill set, and people are a bit wary of like re-rolling and changing skills. But I think the way they paced this game was almost perfect, because as soon as you got just a little bit bored with a particular set of powers, or you felt like you'd done enough of them, you would be changing levels. You'd be at the end of the level. You'd be fighting a boss where you're implementing all the different things you've kind of learned throughout that level, and then on to the next one. There's a fresh approach again. So it's really, really well thought out. It's so cleverly designed, and the ideas that they use, and more importantly, and this is something that you just can't see when you watch gameplay, is just how good the game feels. Like they nailed the controls and the mechanics of this. It feels so. It's not the most advanced game, but then nor are some of the all-time greats. And this has such a great simplistic core set of controls and feels so good that you can almost think of any sort of two different powers and plug them in. And that's exactly what they do. They give you a ton of variety to work through. You, as Tom mentioned, like you are reliant on your partner kind of just being switched on a little bit, and I had problems with mine. Spoiler, he was struggling sometimes, but they've done a really good job just in the gameplay section here. I don't know what else really to say other than it's really, 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 really well executed.
Yeah, I think it's quite like they've done it that night. So mechanically, it feels great, as you say, and it doesn't matter if you're kind of jumping in 3D, 2D, or then you're up in the air a couple of times flying planes or like on birds and things. So like, and it all kind of works. It's intuitive, and you kind of get to grips with it all. It does feel like utterly polished, like Nintendo it's got that kind of stamp of quality all over it. They've kind of done that thing that's quite clever, where it's quite forgiving with a lot of things. It kind of gives you the benefit of the doubt with like hitboxes on enemies and things, or checkpoints are really nice as well. It's only if say Joe dies and I'm alive. That didn't happen often. It's going to say that.
Don't lie to him.
We're all right. It's fine. He just spawns back in. We're good. Nothing's gone wrong. If you both die, you will go back a little bit, but it is super forgiving. Like it checkpoints constantly, basically. So in that respect, it's good. It'd probably be a really good game to play with someone who's not into games. I think the thing is, like with you and me, like it worked really well in that ours probably the weak link, definitely, but it was still fine. It was like rare, and do you know what? I struggled on that underwater bit as well. It's like, how does he know where to go so much? It's like, I think that was another tired day for Tom, to be honest. But anyway, and like we would fly through bits, and it was all very like easy. I think if you're playing with your other half, if they're not a gamer, or you've got a kid and you're playing with them, you might struggle a bit with some of the control. Just like, the things that you take for granted with gaming. If someone's not a gamer, they probably are going to struggle a bit. It might cause a divorce.
Oh, exactly. It might do the opposite to what this book's trying to achieve. And that definitely stuck out to me. That even like there were certainly some bosses and areas that we got stuck on a little bit. And it's not just an easy breezy game. Like it's not. It will push back at times. And I was thinking that if you played this with a non-gamer, there's some parts of it which required like you have to be really in tune with the controls just to survive from the boss, to make sure that you don't die and then reset the checkpoint. I think it would be a bit of a struggle, but
it's a tough one. I think it's a level too much. I think for complete
casual.
And because you are then Yeah, I guess maybe you're right because, like you said, when it splits you up as well, because you can't, sometimes you can, drag the weak link along, but other times, they're gonna have to stand on their own, and that might be a struggle. But I think do you know what? It's so much fun that I think it would be a good one to, if you've gone through it with like me and you now, if I own the game and said to Sarah, do you fancy, playing? She'd be like, definitely not. But if I could make her, I reckon she might like some of these levels.
She might be better than you at it.
Potentially.
Well, does she understand magnets? Yes. Right. Already ahead of the game. So as well as the core sort of game, like you work through a world doing various puzzle solving, maybe a slice of combat here and there, messing around with the new mechanics you've got, and that's the kind of loop you'll be looking to get to somewhere or get something, or there'll be a boss to fight. That's all good stuff. There are little exploration nuggets of people. Like you've got a couple of achievements from like just exploring with the environment, interacting with stuff. So definitely if you like little Easter eggs and bits and pieces like that, have a play around. I think you ended up getting sucked through a printer or something once, and it triggered like a little achievement for you.
It is another thing, isn't it? Like the level of like sheen on it. Like there's so much stuff that's interactive. Just for you to go jump through something once and go, that's fun, and that's it. It's just it has no bearing on the game at all. But you can just wander off, and I think and there's the paint as well, wasn't there? Where you can just like
that's it,
jump in ink and make painting pictures. Like basically, a lot of the time when you transition from one level to another, there'll just be a little area of the house where you can just mess about basically, and it's always good fun.
Yeah, and then they've also got little mini games in there. Well, we didn't keep score, unfortunately, but there are. I can't even remember. I'm trying to think of like a really basic one just to give the guys an idea of what they might encounter.
There was chess, full chess.
There was a full chess set, yeah.
Called it a draw after 4 minutes.
It was getting boring.
And taken one piece.
Well, there was a bit where it should have let me have you, and it didn't let me do it. I was like, this is bollocks. So there's one game where you can play chess, and like this is the competitive element of the game because the game is co-op. There are these little mini games that you can do where there will be a set target, and the person with the most points will win that particular thing. There's a shooting gallery one. There's a few button mash ones, and they're very basic. There's a whack-a-mole one, isn't there, early on?
Oh yeah, whack-a-mole. Yeah, there's one where you have to like dodge the blocks. It's a bit of a Fall Guys sort of thing, wasn't it? Where you keep getting pushed back like on a treadmill. All things like that, really.
And they keep a little score for that game, and then you can keep playing to your heart's content. But we just did a one and done sort of golden rule. Whoever won, then we moved on. I think you didn't seem happy with your performance. I don't think you were too far behind.
No, I think I started poor, had a good run, and I think you clawed back and probably won. Maybe I think it was fair enough, like 60-40 or something.
Probably higher, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, yeah, something like that. But they were decent.
No, absolutely. The only other thing really that stuck out for me was the length of the game, because I had assumed, based on a way out being, it felt like it was reasonably short. This, again, because it's a budget title below sort of full price, this was a lot longer than I expected, and I felt like there were definitely moments where it maybe dragged a little bit, but really it was just enjoyable to play from start to finish. But if you're trying to breakneck through it, it's not really made for that. Well, it is, you can do it, but it felt long. Well, it's longer than the Order 1886. Let's put it that way, and that was a full price fucking AAA game. So, did you have any thoughts on the length of it? Whether it was just a bit too long, or about the perfect length, or considering you paid for it, you're probably thinking that was good value, actually.
To be honest, yeah, it's a hard one because I think it did feel longer than I expected, which then kind of.
But is that because we came in with expectations that we shouldn't have?
Well, that's my point. Yeah, almost certainly, because I think it's in the sweet spot for me. I love a game that's sort of 9 to 14 hours, and this was 12 to 13, something like that. So it's kind of perfect.
Yeah.
But I think just because I wasn't expecting that, it did feel like it kind of was a little bit longer than I wanted. And then it weirdly kind of finished quite abruptly. Like, when you kind of then narratively kind of realise where it's going, and then you kind of expect that one last level to tie it all together, and it wasn't kind of there, or it wasn't the big boss. And I was like, oh, okay, we're done. Weird. And yeah, it was a bit. That's yeah. I mean, it's a small negative point, but I guess could have been a bit neater towards the end, perhaps, or just a little bit shorter. But maybe that's just me. I mean, as you say, it doesn't really wane in quality in any point, so you can't really complain about that.
No, and I guess the important thing was it avoided the possibility of there being like, you feel like this is a recycled reskin of a previous level or mechanic. Like,
that's very true. Yeah,
all the levels felt unique, had their own skill set, and challenged you in different ways. I think that's important when you have a game like this, that you don't go over old ground. It's probably quite easy just to think, oh, we could just do the hammer and nail thing, but just change the items slightly and move stuff around, or do like a remix. Like that's really what I think is key to the length of it. Is that although when you say like 12 hours, you think, fuck me, I didn't expect it to be that long. Actually, like you said, the quality doesn't wane, and nor does the variety or the gameplay options. Like you're not recycling, doing the same bits and pieces. So I think it's a great package, and actually at the price that you can get it at is great value as well. And particularly if there's two of you and one of you hasn't got to pay for it, you split the costs. So really, they've done a great job here. Anything else you wanted to mention before we go into sort of thumbs up or down?
No, not really. Just I'm really curious to know what these guys are going to do next. Really, I hope it does well. I mean, the reviews are good, so I just hope a lot of people get out and play it.
This is the thing. I feel like this has been marketed really poorly, because I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Like you saw the reviews and then thought, well, hang on a minute, let's have a go. And considering we're not wall to wall with game releases, like EA should have had this. I don't know. It felt like it was a bit out of sight, out of mind. And really what's happened is the reviews have come in and it's sort of perked people's ears up. But I think a lot of people have skipped this because although A Way Out was interesting, it wasn't a classic. And this, given how much of a step up this is, I feel like more people should play it that are going to. And also the fact that it's EA, it will come on EA Access, which will mean it will be on Game Pass at some point, probably put some people off. But I would be not wary, but I'd say just go out and get it if you're sniffing around it. But I don't think it was marketed particularly well. I don't know if you felt like he was...
Well, I'd never heard of it, mate, until it was out, basically, and it was reviewed. So, yeah, it's pretty much sums it. I feel like it's probably the story doesn't help. It's a weird one to market, I guess. Like,
yeah, when I did see it, I think last year they showed a trailer of it, and I thought, oh, God, that looks awful. Like, just because of the story, like you mentioned, it just looks like shit, really. Once you suss out, it's a bit more meaty than that, and it's more about the game itself. And actually, the narrative tone kind of fits with the story and the mechanics. It makes it, a much more palatable situation. But there's something about it that definitely turned me off, and then I wasn't interested really until you presented it on a platter, and I was like, well, you know what can I lose here? I'm not going to be playing much else recently. There's not a lot coming out or that had been out, so probably a difficult one to market. But I've got a feeling it might struggle at the sales, but we'll see. I'm hoping that this, at least the critical acclaim, gets them chances to do something else, because I think this is a better direction than what A Way Out was. A Way Out was interesting for what it was, but ultimately quite flawed. Whereas this has very few flaws in it, really, when you break it down as a video game. Come on then, what are you gonna give it for its thumbs? Thumbs up, thumbs down, in the middle. What's Faris gonna? Because if he gets wind that we've not given it a fair shake, he'll be on the next video saying fuck Dimp Digital. He'll be saying, and we can't be having that sort of negative story being spun out there. So
it's a tougher one. It's definitely a thumb up for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's just whether, because I'm thinking the fact that it can't be for everyone, because obviously it's multiplayer only, and I think it is. It probably can't even go out to the net to get a random. I think it has to be invite only. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
And so
but you want to play it with someone else.
Absolutely, yeah.
Someone 100%. You know, or at least can speak to.
Yeah. Well, you have to communicate with the people, don't you? So it'd be a no-go without. And then obviously the storyline and the characters does that, but it is so much fun. I would say I'm going to give it a 2 up, because I think just the game itself plays beautifully and it is a lot of fun. And like you said, if you think you are going to be annoyed with those characters, it ain't for you, then fair play, drop it. But saying that, if it comes from Game Pass and whatnot, like 6 months from now, then it is an absolute no-brainer. Dive in. You're going to have some fun.
I'm going to give it the 1 thumb up for sure. It's a strong 1 thumb up. It doesn't quite get the 2, simply because the narrative component just was a bit too inconsistent in the end. But they're really, like, this is a high recommendation. If you've got someone else that's at a loose end and you're kind of struggling to figure out what to play, just go out and get this. Don't worry about this fucking Game Pass FOMO. Oh, I'm going to waste my money. Just go out and get it if you're at a loose end and you've got someone else to play with, because you won't. I don't think many people won't like this game once they get past perhaps the narrative pieces and the tone. I mean, if you like the tone of it, your quid's in here. Like, if you like annoying characters, I don't know who does, then you are laughing, because you've got a great game to play and a story to get involved with. What they really need to do for the next game is join up with Disney, get the Pixar writers in and say, look, we need you to write the story, we'll do the mechanics, and then once that's happened, we're on to an absolute home run, aren't we?
That is Dreamsville for these guys, isn't it?
Because they make, like, stuff for kids, Pixar, but also adults usually can watch it and there's something good for them. Whereas this just seems to... I don't even know if this is for kids. I think they say shit a few times. So I don't be thinking it's even made for a younger audience. But yeah, 1 thumb. Very, very strong game. A complete surprise, really, if I'm honest. One of the few times that I have not bothered to get something and then been so happy that I actually did get an opportunity to play it. It was going to get left to the Game Pass fodder, and then by that stage, who knows whether I'd have played it, because I'd have been like, oh, it's a bit old now. You can kind of miss the boat on it. But yeah, mark it down on your calendars. If you're on PlayStation, if you're on PC, just go out and get it. You haven't got to worry about Game Pass too much. Or PC technically can, but I don't know if it will come to that. If you're on the PlayStation infrastructure, go out and get it. Make sure you've got someone to play with, obviously. And I think most people will be extremely satisfied with the quality, with the polish, with the length, and don't let any negative vibes from A Way Out that you had tarnish It Takes Two, because it's such a complete change in direction and an improvement on every single item of a video game. It really is one of the biggest departures I've seen for a long time, and a real positive one. So keep It Takes Two in the front of your minds and make sure that when you get the chance, you take it and spend the time with it. Before we crack on to the next game, I did want to ask what you thought of these co-op only games. You can't play this one player. You don't have the option. It has to be 2-player. Now, what I liked about It Takes Two and also A Way Out is that even though you're playing 2-player, it's split screen all the time. So when Tom was really being poor, I could see what he was doing and direct him. I could say, wrong way. And even then, he weren't always, switched on to follow the instructions. But at least you can kind of see what's happening. But what do you make of this? Because there will be people out there that are just like, oh, you know what, that sounds like a great game, but I just don't want to play co-op games. Should the team at Hazelight and Faris be looking into making some sort of single those solo players who really just don't want to engage, or maybe haven't got anyone to play with, can yield the goods of what they're producing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fine with it, is the short answer. I think that there are obviously some downsides to it, as you say, if you haven't got anyone to play with and you really like the look of the game. But also, I'm like, the experience is built around that. I mean, it's not like, these are flooding the market or anything. So
True.
There's enough single player experiences for people, or, whatever. So I don't think it's a problem. And they are like, if anything, it's the other way, isn't it? These sort of couch co-op game. I mean, it's not couch co-op only, but they're kind of designed, to be playing it with a friend or family member, someone and you can kind of get shirty with, and
I don't think we got shirty with each other, did we?
No. But I just mean,
I had to mute a few times and just swear into the ether.
Absolutely.
But
poor Davey got a right earful. No, I think they're great, to be honest. I wish there was more of them, if I'm on, because they are fun. And basically, if there was a way out, I love the concept of A Way Out. If that had been done with this sort of level of like finesse, I think you could have had a really good game on your hands. But yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's different if the co-op's been bolted on, and you can tell sometimes, can't you? It's just been added as like either an afterthought or whatever. But this, like you mentioned, the whole game's built around this being a co-op game. Like all the puzzles require some level of cooperation, timing, skill, communication, all that good stuff. And without that, if you strip that away, in the instance of It Takes Two, you strip out most of what makes the game great.
Exactly.
So at that point, what's the point in doing it? It's a shame for those that aren't able to find someone to play with. That's definitely a concern. But I think I broadly agree. Like, we're not flooded with the market of these sort of stuff. And if you want to get the most out of these games, it's I always prefer a game to, even if it's awkward to play or to get into the ecosystem to play it. If the game is based around that specific play style or having those specific number of people, 9 times out of 10, if you can get that environment set up, i.e. another player in this case, the game's 10 times better than what it could have been when it's trying to cater for, other types of environments. The same with like Destiny, like the raids in Destiny, 6-player raids. There's a reason why they're designed for 6 people. It's because they need 6 people to cooperate, and that's what makes those moments for people special. So, I'm looking forward to what they do. It's probably going to be a few years, we must say. But Hazelight Studios, bit of a breakout game, really. I know that A Way Out got a lot of publicity, but didn't really deliver critically. This maybe didn't get the publicity, but certainly critically has got the thumbs up from us. 2 from Tom, 1 from me. Now, if I was going to say to you, Return of the Obra Dinn, what would you say back?
I was going to say less than 8-bit graphics, an adventure on a boat, murder.
Yeah, but I tell you what, that's summed it up better than I could have done. Really? No. Yeah, so I've played Return of the Obra Dinn. I've actually played it a while ago now, but I've been holding on to it until I could get Tom back. So, because I knew that you would either heard of the game or maybe sniffed around it, and I felt like you'd have some good questions about this. Now, before I start about Return of the Obra Dinn, this was developed by Lucas Pope. Some people be going, "Oh yeah, I know him." Most people be going, "Don't know what you're talking about." But the last game he developed was Papers, Please, which I really enjoyed on PC. It's on, I believe it's on consoles now anyway, where you take control of like a checkpoint guard where you check people's IDs as they come through the border. Of like, I can't remember if it's a communist or an authoritarian country. It's obviously something going. People are trying to get in the country. You've got to check have they got all the stuff, yes or no. And there's a great little underlying story weaved into that about whether you're doing the government's work or you can sort of switch sides and become like a terrorist, or you can just try and get through the day and earn some money on the side and look after your family, all that good stuff. It's a really well thought out game, very simple but strangely addictive. And Return of the Obra Dinn is at heart really it's a mystery game. So there's a boat called the Obra Dinn that sets sail, East India Company, okay, goes missing in, I think it's 1800s, okay, disappears and then washes up at a port a few years later, and all the crew are either dead or missing, okay. You as the player go onto the boat, you work for the insurance company, and you mentioned mystery and sort of murder, figuring that out. You're tasked with determining what happened on that boat and what happened to every single member of staff and crew on that particular boat. And you have a couple of tools at your disposal. Well, one tool, really. One is this stopwatch, okay? What the stopwatch allows you to do is when you come across a corpse or a dead body, you can visualise and hear and see the last kind of 15 seconds of that person's life.
Right.
So what will happen is you'll see a body, you'll activate the stopwatch, it will go to black. You won't see anything initially. You'll hear the characters interacting with each other. Then say if someone's got shot, you'll hear the gunshot go, and then the screen will come to light, and it'll be a still. The scene that you enter will be still, so everyone's completely still, but you have to see where they are, who's firing the gun, and you can freely walk around the environment to see what's actually happened. And the idea is that over time, once you view enough of these scenes, you're able to determine the fate of every single member of that boat. So it's a big task, if I'm honest, and it's quite daunting to start with, but it's a really, really unique concept, and I love the idea of it. And I guess the way I'll set up like the first scenario, for example, you just find there's a body outside the door. You go and find it. You activate the stopwatch. You can hear them shouting. The guy says, "Captain, you've gone mad. What are you doing?" You hear a gunshot. It takes you into the scene. You can see what you'd assume to be the captain because you heard him say it, firing the gun, and the bullet's gone in the bloke's chest. So you know that he's been shot by the captain.
Yeah.
So you go to your logbook, you mark down, unknown sailor, because you don't know his name at this time, shot by the captain. And the idea is eventually, over time of visiting these scenes, you'll figure out actually the name of that actual person. Then you'll have to determine their fate properly.
So what, somebody else might give a description of someone and name them, then you realise that was person X from before, and okay.
So it could be something as simple as they'll say, "Oh, you're not coming on this boat, you fucking Dane," something like that, because in the logbook it has the name, what their job was, and what country they came from.
Yeah.
And then by then you can narrow it down. You can say, "Oh, it's Danish." Okay, there's only one of those. It's got to be Sven. I made that name up. Probably not Sven, but that's what you've got to kind of look out for. Those little subtle interactions, or it could be like, "Oh, you done my brother in." Something like that, and then you think, oh, actually, there's two people with the same surname. Which brother's referring to who? And over time, you will better.
So
fill
have you
in
got
the
the
gaps.
logbook? Have you got the full logbook from the beginning then?
Yeah, so you've got all the crew's name and their job titles from the beginning. And what happens is when you when you kind of visit a body, it will show their face on this big like group picture. And the idea is that you go to the group picture. You then from there you can say, right, this is Andrew Webber shot by Captain Smith, and then it won't tell you you've definitely got it right until you've got 3 that are right.
Okay.
So it's to stop you from just going through every single combination, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You have to go with what you think it is, and then if you get 2 others that are correct, those 3 will check off, and then they're done. So I quite liked that because there's times when you can definitely be tempted to think, oh, I'm just going to try every combination. Like it's going to be one of these 4. Which one's it going to be? And that really stops you from being able to do that.
Okay.
But it's really good. the main drawback of it is it's clunky to get in and around the different memories and scenes. Like there's no. I wish you could just go to a menu and select the memory and go back to it, because what inevitably happens is you will have to go back and revisit some because you won't notice certain details, or you'll be like, I think I saw this happen back in that scene. And you have to, unfortunately, navigate through this book, which is like a glorified menu, and find where it is, then go and visit the corpse in where that memory took place. I wish you could just select it straight out the book, and dive directly back into the memory and see what's going on.
Okay.
But it's really rewarding because over time you'll feel completely lost and think, I'm never going to get this, and you just get one breakthrough, which leads to another breakthrough, and you can carry that momentum through. You've really got to have an eye for detail, though. Really got to have an eye to detail.
Do you need to wander around the boat itself, or is it all just done through these menus? Like, can you go anywhere and look?
Oh yeah, no. So you've got full access to the boat, so you can wander around the boat. You'll see bones or corpses on the floor, and then that's when you investigate those. If in whilst you're in a memory, you notice another body, that'll then highlight it on sort of the present day ship, so you can go and investigate that body. So you can kind of string corpses together. You're never left at a point where you can't get to the next body or the next kind of scenario.
Is it one of those games with a defined end, or is it a bit like Her Story, where it's kind of like you decide when you're ready to call it a day?
Yeah, so once you've visited every memory, you can get off the ship and just bin it off. And there's a few endings that can happen. So I won't spoil what happens in the ending, but if you don't fulfill the logbook, for example, you just get like a bit of you get a response from the guy that requested it from you and just says, well, a bit disappointed in you really. But the idea is that you get to the very bitter end, and by unlocking and finding out what actually happened to these people, the story of the whole ship becomes more clear. Like you figure out exactly what happened when, and they go on. There's all sorts of twists and turns that happen. Why certain people have started shooting each other? Why is the captain shooting his crew members? Like, all that is revealed if you, well, by virtue of you doing those tasks, if that makes sense. You'll find out a lot more about it. But if you're just sick of it, you can walk away and be like, yeah, that's my ending. I'm done with it. But to get the full part of it, you kind of need to do the whole lot, really.
And how long are we talking? How long did you spend with it?
I've done 10 hours, I think. So,
sweet spot. It's good.
Yeah, it was. I got the platinum as well, which was, well, it is what it is. But that's pretty easy to get. But yeah, it's one of those games though that you'll be tempted to look at a guide because you'll just feel completely stuck and lost. And sometimes it's really difficult because it only gives you certain options of like a death type. And sometimes you'll see the person, like, obviously it's a still image. So you'll see like what looks to be like a flame, but you're like, right, is he burnt to death or has he been exploded to death? And it's those types of intricacies that can trip you over, because if you don't put down what the game wants you to put, it won't check it off, and you might be really close. So there was definitely a couple of instances where that happened to me, where I knew what happened, but I was using the wrong terminology on the death. And that was quite frustrating because it wasn't as clear as what I felt like it should have been. The game didn't communicate to me exactly what had happened.
So what, have you got like a drop down of like options? Like, as you say, like burnt to death, but it was actually set alight or whatever.
Yeah. So you essentially choose it from the book. There's like 24 options, and the clever thing they do is not all of them are used. So there's stuff on there that's just sort of like a red herring, just there to sort of, make you choose the wrong one or frighten you into it. But really smart, really clever, and overall, very, very good game. Obviously not for everyone, because the nature of these puzzle mystery games is that there's a lot of onus on you as the player going out of your way to understand what's happened and searching and whatnot. If they could make the transition in between older memories cleaner and better, I think that would have been a massive upgrade, particularly in the latter stages where you're just like, I just need to get back to that old memory, and sometimes you can only access it through another memory, so you have to go to the corpse one, then go to corpse, and that gets a little bit annoying, but it's great. Like, you have to pick up on things like people's accents, because if they're Scottish or Irish or Welsh, you hear them talk and you think, oh, that's the Welshman. So it really is quite clever. The way how he's designed this, I have no idea how he's come up with this, but it's a great little game. And if people are at all interested in what I've said, then go out and get your hands on it. You can get it on sale quite regularly for like a tenner. So it's good, very, very enjoyable.
What sort of score are we giving this then?
Easy 1 thumbs up. Another one of those. I mean, to give it 2, it would have had to make the menu systems a bit more intuitive. Some people won't like the art style, but it's like one bit like
that's it,
monochromatic graphics, which is fine. Like if you only like 3D sort of AAA stuff, this isn't the game for you. But I enjoyed that. You can change those as well and change different types of like the colours of the lines and whatnot. But that might put people off. But really, it's a really solid game. Really, really smart. Really clever. Quite demanding if you're looking to play through this and not use any guides. But I would just say try your best not to. You're going to hit walls. You're going to get frustrated, but the satisfaction of just checking off another 3 and getting that little goes didn't like ticks 3 off in a row, and you're like, yes, that's 3 more done. And it will feel like a daunting task, but if I can do it, then most people can.
There he goes.
That's Crufts. Well, to be honest, Mr. Adcock, I think we're out of time for this week. So
it looks that way, doesn't it?
We've got It Takes Two in the can. We've gone back and done Return of the Obra Dinn. There's a few others which we won't mention, but we'll be back in the near future to discuss those. But if you have joined us, either on the YouTubes or on your favourite podcast app, thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. We appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen/watch us. And like I said, if you can support us on Patreon or on Twitch, or just keep listening. That's one way of doing it. And if there's any complaints you've got, send them off to Adcock. He's sort of PR now, so he's dealing with all the complaints and ombudsman and Ofcom and all that stuff. So he will be filtering through those when he gets time. But nothing more for us to say apart from thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.